Hello Internet, 60x Self. I figured since I can't show you my playthrough of Persona 5, I would tell you about it in a weekly update. Obviously, this means there's going to be spoilers. The deeper I get into the game, the bigger those spoilers will be, naturally. And let me begin by saying that I have played all of the Persona games, albeit not all to their conclusion. I have played them all. And Persona 4 is my favorite game of all time, period. I'm saying this up front because I will inevitably be comparing this game, Persona 5, to its previous games, particularly Persona 3 and Persona 4. And this will likely be a longer episode. I've already been playing for a few weeks before I decided I wanted to share my thoughts and feelings and progress, so there's a lot to talk about. So let me start with the story synopsis, as briefly as I can. The main character, whom I have named Yoshio Rokumo, is captured by dozens of police and SWAT, because apparently he's a big deal. And after, let's call it, forceful interrogation, a woman named Sai Nijima interrupts to ask her own questions for the SIU, which would stand for Special Investigations, but Shadow Investigation Unit? Huh? And this begins a flashback to before Yoshi had the code name Joker. Yoshi is on his way to live with his nothing. He's going to live with someone who is not related to him at all, apparently a friend of his parents, but an unrelated man named Sojiro. And he's on his way there because he stopped a very powerful man from sexually assaulting a woman, who then had Yoshi charged with assault on himself. Due to this man's political pull, Yoshi is on his way to a new city, Tokyo, and a new school, Shujin Academy, and a brand new criminal record. Immediately on arrival, he is met with hostility and mistrust by teachers and other students, including one who is a very, very bad man, Kamoshida. Yoshi also meets a new friend, Ryuji, another trouble student who has had a run-in with Kamoshida before. And a bunch of weird things start happening. This strange navigation app appears on Yoshi's smartphone. This app leads to another dimension where you start to learn more about Kamoshida's distorted desires. A crazy talking cat thing named Morgana arrives on the scene to guide you. And a young girl attempts to commit suicide because her volleyball coach, Kamoshida, molested her. Yeah, this game is a lot darker than the last one. So long story short, you defeat Kamoshida's shadow self, the shadow self being the representation of a person's inner desires and thoughts. And you do this in his mind palace, which is shaped like a castle, and he is the king. So with the help of An, another character you meet, you defeat his shadow self and force a change of heart by stealing his distorted desires. With that change of heart, he then goes to the police and confesses his crime to pay for his sins. Yoshi, Ryuji, and An decide that this is great fun. They should continue to change the hearts of really bad people. They do this with the help of a side character, Mishima, who creates a fan site, Phantom Thieves website. And yes, that's fan with a PH, fan site. Complete with a forum for people to post their troubles and ask for the Phantom Thieves' help. Oh, by the by, you're the Phantom Thieves. And this ultimately leads to another mind palace of an artist, the great artist, Madarame. Not so much a great artist, more of a big jerk who takes the art of his pupils and passes it as his own, while also physically abusing them, leading to at least one suicide of a student who couldn't take it anymore. So now, with the help of his last remaining student, Yusuke, not to be confused with Yosuke from the past game, the Phantom Thieves are out to steal Madarame's distorted desires and force him to have a change of heart and confess his crimes. So far, the story seems to be very much about kids versus adults. Adults who are in the game described as shitty, repeatedly, and they have been shitty. There have been no good adults so far. Every adult is either a jerk, abusive, or working with some ulterior motive. They all seem hell of shady. Ryuji has, in fact, repeatedly made reference to shitty adults, and how they have to fight back against them. It's kids versus adults. My biggest takeaway from the story so far, aside from children versus adults, a lot of sexualizing female characters. It's an inconsistency that is bothering me a lot, mostly because the very first boss is all about how terrible it is to molest teenage girls, but the game is constantly sexualizing An, not just with her cat lady boobs out costume, but there's an extended sequence leading up to getting Yusuke as part of your team about An posing nude for him. There's also the Morgana character, who is a more intense version of Teddy. Teddy was a character from Persona 4, sort of a mascot character, and his whole deal was trying to score with the girls and see them naked. That was his thing, really. There was some inner turmoil going on as well, but that was the big takeaway. Score with the girls. There's some debate over whether he was knowingly being a D-bag or just innocently copying the lecherous attitudes of the other teenage boys in the team. There is no debate with Morgana. Morgana is interested in An sexually. There's a bit where he comments on the softness of her butt. It seems like an unnecessary comment for the game to make. And again, the distorted desires of the first boss of the game, the opening of the game, lusting after and raping teenage girls, including An. There's an entire bit about how Kamoshida sees An as a sexual object. That's the first boss. So the inconsistency within this game is Morgana is cute and lovable, Kamoshida is a monster and we need to destroy him. But it's still early. I'm curious if the game will do something to contend with creepy Morgana. But actually, overall, the characters just don't seem as lovable as previous Persona games. They're not leaving as strong of an impression. And it's difficult for me to remember my first impressions of Persona 3 and Persona 4. I've spent years with those characters, reading all kinds of stories, manga, side games, anime. There's just a lot of character development I've had with them. So I cannot remember my first impressions, but none of these characters seem likable so far. They seem a lot more single note, not a lot of depth. But again, we're early, so perhaps there's going to be some layers peeled away to reveal more depth. It's not that the writing is bad. It's just, you know what? My favorite character so far is the playable character, Yoshi. The one meant to be a surrogate, or the person actually playing the game. This game leans into that mature rating a lot harder. The language is a lot harsher. Plenty of F-bombs already dropped. And there's a lot more blood and violence. Here's a good example. Instead of coming to terms with a person's shadow self and thus gaining a persona to fight evil, as in Persona 4, the main characters in Persona 5 seem to be forced to comply. There's a lot of writhing around, screaming, while their persona talks to them about forging a contract. Then a mask appears on their face, and they have to rip it off, complete with a spout of blood from their face to summon that persona. And after defeating an enemy with an all-out attack, which is a special super powerful attack where all of the characters jump in on the enemy after they've knocked all the enemies down by hitting their elemental weakness. And if you defeat the enemies with an all-out attack, you're greeted with a visual of blood spewing into the sky from the defeated monster. Granted, it's silhouetted, but a lot of blood. And the second violent way Persona 5 earns that mature rating, the first boss, Stroke Palace, is a horrible monster who rapes underage girls and abuses students under the guise of coaching them to be a better team. The scariest part for me is the number of authority figures, other authority figures, teachers, the principal, other parents that know what Kamoshida's doing and look the other way because of some prestige or fear of him or whatever the reason is. Other authority figures that are supposed to protect these students looking the other way while he does things so awful that one tries to kill herself. Now this is a very hard opening to the game, and frankly the second boss seems far less horrible in comparison. He's kind of a jerk, but he steals the art from his students. Let me just put it this way. After hearing about the first 15 hours of the game from me, my partner is completely turned away and has no interest in seeing this game. We played all of Persona 4 together, but now my partner does not want to see any of Persona 5. Not interested. Specifically turned away by the sexual nature of the violence and just the violence in general. I'm not saying these are bad things. I like the game a lot, other than the inconsistencies I've talked about already with Morgana and Kamoshida, but it is definitely a much harder M than Persona 4. Actually, playing the game has, for me, greatly improved. It's a lot of little things that add up to a smoother experience. The menus seem to have been cut back. It is really handy being able to go up against a monster you've already fought, hit a button, and be taken immediately to what their weakness is, without needing to go to an info screen about the monster you're fighting, and then back out of that menu, go into the menu for the skills your persona has, and then attacking. Or if you're the playable character, going into the menu of different personas available, finding the right persona, and then going into the skills menu. It's fewer menus and it's a lot smoother of a process. Not everything is a welcome change though. They did bring back the conversation system. In the first few Persona games, Persona 1 and the 2 Persona 2 games, you talked with the demons in an effort to buy their favor and make them a part of your team, to then fight by your side and be fused together to get new personas. It was a whole thing. It was probably my least favorite part of the first few Persona games. Now this does seem to be a lot more relaxed than those conversation systems. It's a lot easier to get through, I think. And it's really nice that you don't have to go through the conversation system again. Once they're registered into your compendium, you can just skip that whole conversation thing, and that is a welcome addition. But generally, I liked the method of getting new personas in Persona 3 and Persona 4. My biggest problem with the gameplay changes is the world is massive. There's a lot going on, and frankly I find it a little bit overwhelming, to the point that I've basically been abusing the fast travel system, which then leads to some anxiety about missing side characters and side stories, which is, I know, a little bit of a weird thing to complain about. Too much game. I'm sure I'll learn the map eventually, but it is very overwhelming at first. So that's where I'm at so far with Persona 5. I'm going to try to do these weekly so that I can keep them shorter and just catch you up on where I am. This first one is a little bit lengthy, and I didn't even get to hit on everything I would really like to talk about. However, if you're curious about seeing where I am in the game, keep paying attention. If you liked this video, like it and subscribe for more. There have been a lot of different things coming up lately. I'm planning to just kind of throw things out there and see what sticks. So if you see something you like it, share it, subscribe, sign up for notifications. I should be doing a video every week, at least one, hopefully 2, because this shouldn't count as the normal video I'm doing that week. And I hope everybody's having a good time. Bye, Internet.